recording for sharing for later. So I'm just letting you know. And now, welcome everybody to our session today. This webinar topic is Understanding Business Analysis Process. And I'm so happy to have you. I know some of you attended the previous webinar, Is Business Analysis for Me? If so, I'm glad you're back. If not, I'm really happy that you are here with me today. Let's just get started because time is going and we will be moving along. And I'm going to be moving my head between two screens. It's not because I'm distracted. I'm just trying to manage technology. Believe me, I've learned a lot of new things about technology in the last months or so. So what is business process? Why do we need to understand it? I think the fact that you joined me today means that you would like to know, and I would like to share it with you today. Why me and who I am? My name is Yulia Kosarenko. If you don't know me yet, I have a long business analysis career. I have been business analyst, systems analyst. I moved into business architecture later. I managed a business analysis team. And now I have my own business called Consulting. So I consult both corporate clients and individual business analysts. I do some one-on-one coaching as well. I wrote a book about business analysis, and I also will be teaching in Humber College here in Toronto a business analytics program. Here is my book. If you are interested in business analysis, you might want to consider buying it if you'd like to. There is a digital copy on Amazon and a digital copy on Kobo, and I will be using a lot of concepts from this book and diagrams and visuals in this presentation today as well. All right, so we're moving to the agenda. For those who just joined, I hope you're on mute. Let me know if you have any problems with the sound or with the visuals. I'm going to go ahead with the webinar. All right? So here is the agenda for today. We are going to talk about where do requirements come from, how do we do business analysis, what are the steps in business analysis process, when does business analysis end, and what are the deliverables. Okay. But before we get to the process, I just want to quickly recap what's business analysis for anyone who perhaps is not is not in this profession yet, and just in general, so that when we focus on business analysis process, we focus on the business part of it and on analysis part of it. So business analysis is a practice of analyzing organizations and their functions with the goals of identifying solutions to business problems. If you've attended previous webinar, you may remember this picture, but really we are talking about the problem and how that problem needs to be analyzed, and then how business analyst helps the whole team and stakeholders to figure out what this solution should be to solve this problem. When we talk about business analysis, again, we need it because businesses experience change and businesses need to change. You may have heard an expression that business analyst is a facilitator of change, and that's very true. At any time your business is in a certain state, its processes, products, customers, its business model, but businesses change, and right now they change even faster than usual. To get to the future state where this business or this organization wants to be, to have new customers or improve its market share or just to stay in business perhaps, the business needs to change. So when we talk about requirements, we really need to talk about what needs to happen to implement this change and to get to the future state. I don't know what happened. Sorry about it. 1 second. For some reason, I jumped to the end of my presentation. My apologies. That's what happens online sometimes. Let me just go back. I must have clicked something else. My apologies. Let me bring it back. Can you see my screen that says business requirements? Just say yes in the chat to make sure. Yeah. Thanks. Perfect. So what are business requirements? When we talk about business requirements, we start with analyzing the current state as is. Oh, it's not full screen. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let me just double check. Sorry, guys and ladies, I'm just trying to battle with this technology just like everybody else. Okay. Is this full screen? No. Can you see this? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, sometimes it is just, I find that I'm using so many new tools that I can't even keep track of those tools anymore. And I have to keep learning all the time, believe me. So thank you for letting me know. So let's just talk about business requirements now. So when we are talking about requirements, we start with current state and with analysis of the problem as is, which means we are breaking down the problem into manageable components to understand it. Then we look at future state. Where do we want to be to achieve our goals as a business? And the path from current state to future state, that's where requirements come in. Requirements tells us what is required to close the gap. So the definition of requirements is its features and capabilities needed to solve a business problem or satisfy a business need. And I'm not sure if you know this, but I haven't used the words information technology once yet. I haven't used the words business, system, or application. I'm just talking about business requirements. And business requirements is much wider than its application in information technology. So let's move on now and let's talk about business analysis process. And really business analysis process is about requirements. So where do those requirements really come from? Let's just start with that. Where do requirements come from? And what I wanted to do is just ask you to type in the chat quickly in 2-3 words, where do you think business requirements come from? All right, stakeholders, business. All right. Yeah, okay. Regulators, team members. Okay, wonderful. Organizations, from people, testers, problems. Okay. Needs and feature needs for business problem from customers. Yes, thank you very much. So you are talking about the stakeholders that have requirements. And I put the picture here, and that's a picture of a beautiful apple tree with those wonderful red apples that just asked to be picked. And I put it on purpose because when I started business analysis, my very first business analysis course was called How to Gather Business Requirements. And that's what you do. You go to the orchard and you gather the apples or you gather the berries. What happens in reality is if you go to your stakeholders and your business, do you actually ask them, hey, give me your requirements? What are your requirements? So what I really want to leave you with today, if it was anything at all that you will remember after my webinar, it's this. Business requirements don't come from business. Business requirements come from business analysis. And we see here an oil refinery, and it's one of the analogies for analysis. You have the information that comes from your customers. They'll tell you about their pain points and the problems and the symptoms of the problem, but they don't necessarily have requirements. They don't know what their requirements are. Sometimes your stakeholders don't even understand what you mean when you say, what are your requirements? They'll tell you, hey, this doesn't work, or I don't like this, or our customers are leaving us, or our product isn't selling well. There will be so many pain points, but that's not necessarily requirements. It's business analysis that takes that information about current state and about the problems and about all the information that you can find. And from that information, you analyze and then you discover what the real requirements are. All right. So it's such an important concept that I want to actually jump a little bit forward and then come back and say, don't ask what are your requirements of your stakeholders. Ask them, what is your problem or what do you need to achieve? You as a business analyst will gather that information And then you'll have to analyze it before you actually can come up with business requirements. So let me just go back for a second. And here is one of the many possible ways to represent business analysis process. And just like anything, there are so many ways to depict it. You can give different names to these phases or to these parts of business analysis process. Different organizations will have different names for the activities within the business analysis process. So it's not necessarily the one and only way, but it's just the one that we will be using. And I think the main point here is that business analysis is also a process. And I love this quote by Deming, who says, if you can describe what you're doing as a process, then you don't know what you're doing. So as you're doing your business analysis, it is a process and it has its own rules and flows and activities. And it's a very useful exercise to look at business analysis as a process. So that you can A, describe what you're doing, B, you can plan it, and then C, you can manage your time and resources to achieve what you wanted to achieve. All right. So I see Anu is making some comments about stressing on the business analysis. When I ask what do you need to achieve the business as well, I saw the software does this and like that. Yeah, businesses love to solution and they love to say, hey, I want this button or I want a new report. And they just think of little gadgets and widgets that they would like to have. But as business analysts, we always have to go back to business and we have to ask what problem you're trying to solve. All right. So let's now look at our business analysis process. And we start with discovery. When we start business analysis, when working on a new project, we first discover what is going on. What is this business about? What is actually the problem? What is happening? Before you actually determine or understand or capture requirements, you really need to discover what's going on. So what do we discover? We discover the strategic goals, in particular the goals that this project needs to achieve. We discover the context. What is the context in which this business exists? We look at the business problem or business need. We discover stakeholders, customers, regulators. We try to understand the current state, the constraints, and then the artifacts, which could be anything that you can put your hands on that exists today. It could be screens, reports, documents, user manuals, defect logs, anything that can give you more information about what is the current state, what things are working, what things are not working. You need that before you can really help business understand what is the root cause of their problem that you need to resolve. There is many discovery techniques, and I just listed here a few. And I also mentioned here that there's so many names that this discovery phase can have. It can be called current state analysis, artifacts analysis, elicitation phase. But really what it is about is doing research, discovering, gathering information. You may be analyzing the business domain, the competitors, what's going on in the market, what are the regulations, are they changing? You may need to meet with executive sponsors and stakeholders, interview them, conduct focus groups, do questionnaires, surveys, job shadowing. There are so many ways to gather this information. The point here is you're not going to be gathering requirements just yet. You will be gathering information about what is going on. And as you do it, you will hear all about the problems. You will hear about pain points and defects and the stupid process steps and so many other things. That's where your gathering of information happens. And as outcomes of this discovery, you will start to produce some of those analysis artifacts. As part of it could be done by project manager, but most of these are really business analyst outcomes. And it could be a context model for your business, stakeholder matrix. You discover customer personas and their different needs. You discover business problem statement, and sometimes you figure out that it's not exactly what was given to you at the beginning of the project. As you dig in more, you discover constraints, pain points, existing artifacts, etc., etc. So just one example for you. We're not going to talk about all of them. I will have another webinar on outcomes of business analysis. But here is just one simple example. What could be the outcome of your discovery? This is a context model for my case study that I used in the book. What I was always referring to is a catering company that's creating a new online order processing. So here what you see is a very simple context model. My online order processing capability has so many different stakeholders. It needs to work with product groups, with the group, which identifies different products that we will be catering, the sales team, the food preparation team, the customers that will be purchasing the catering services, the delivery service, and perhaps the schedule that will be scheduling the deliveries in trucks. So very simple, but this context model already gives you some main stakeholders that you may have forgotten, or will give you some information about what other applications your new system will need to be integrated with or speaking to. And also it tells you what groups of stakeholders you need to speak to before you can complete your analysis. If anyone would like to throw in the chat some other examples of what you do when you do your discovery, please feel free, put it in the chat so that everyone can see, and then we'll move on. All right. Anybody's doing context models, discovering what the types of customers are, process maps. Yeah, sometimes we will do process maps as part of discovery to understand current state, or perhaps, and I think that's a very good point to make, is before you do process maps, find out maybe some of them already exist. Often analysts just start from scratch, but don't make those assumptions. You may discover that the previous project has done some process maps, or perhaps a change management group. Always ask what exists. Yeah, as this process, lucid charts, yeah, so different software that is being used especially for process maps in organizations. I think if anything, you will be able to discover process maps. Context diagrams, wonderful. Thank you so much. So we can see here that a lot of analysis focuses on business process. But just what I wanted to say is, yes, process is very important, but there are some other items. Terminology, glossary, business rules, how do current reports look, how do screens look, is there an incident log, a customer's feedback, and so on. Legacy documentation, yes, SWOT analysis, wonderful. Thank you. Let's talk about the next phase. The next phase, and again, they don't always happen sequentially, but the next phase is assumptions. And when we talk about assumptions, we shouldn't be looking at those as our enemy. Sometimes you say, hey, don't assume this, or if you do, then your analysis will go wrong. We always need to make assumptions, otherwise we'll never get started, right? Because whenever you start a new project, you need to assume that certain things are in place. You need to assume that the business is continuing within this business model, or you need to assume, for example, that the legislation is not going to change drastically in the next couple of months. So there's always assumptions you need to do, otherwise you can't even start. And it's just a necessary foundation of your project. So once you have done your discovery, and as you're doing your discovery, you will be finding those assumptions. Some of those will come from project manager or from your sponsors. Always try to capture those because they help you to base your analysis on it. And then as you monitor what happens with those assumptions as you go through analysis, if your assumption is changing, then it will be easier for you to track what requirements and what functions you need to review because they were based on this particular assumption. So that could be business rules, context, outside impacts, anything that really helps you ground your analysis on. Now we're doing analysis. So we've discovered a lot of information. We've discovered those artifacts and current state. That's not analyzed yet. That's just a lot of information. And if you've been doing analysis for a long time, you know that sometimes it means a lot of documents. so much information that your head feels like it's going to explode, all that terminology, and you can't make sense of it yet. It's just too much, or it's a little bit unorganized, and you are not sure how to use it. That's actually when you're doing your analysis. And the goals of your analysis are understanding how business works, identifying the essential components of your business. Who are the actors? What are the processes? What are the products? What are the main value chains? And really understanding how all that is connected. You identify important cause-effect relationships, and that's very important because if you don't do that, then you may hear from a customer about their pain point, and you'll say, "Yeah, that's the problem we need to fix," and you will be fixing something that is really just a symptom of an underlying problem. Just like if you have a fever, you can just take a Tylenol for your fever, perhaps, to bring it down. But if you're not actually addressing what is the infection that is causing you fever, then you're only treating the symptom and not the root cause. So identifying the root cause of business problem is very important, and you don't always know it in advance. Sometimes your business problem is actually just a symptom of what is not right. But why is it not right, and what is it that needs to be changing? That's what needs to be discovered. And I would say that this particular point, looking for root cause, it's the most important part of business analysis, but it's also what business analysts don't always get to do, or don't always know that they're allowed to do that they're allowed to question the business problem statement that they were given. But if we don't question the business problem statement, how are we sure that we are solving the right problem, right? So other things we do in analysis, we need to isolate pertinent facts from unstructured information. We just focus on the most important pieces, and we extract them and we organize them in our brains and in our deliverables as well. And we also may pinpoint what we don't know. As you analyze and you group and structure all the information, you may discover gaps. Perhaps nobody mentioned to you what's happening after you deliver the product to the customer. And you may ask this question, what happens then? Are you supposed to hear back from your customer? Is there a complaint process? Is there a warranty? Oh, we forgot to mention it. So as you arrange the information that you received in whatever way you learn to do it as a business analyst, you may discover the gaps, and those gaps may mean missed requirements. All of this is part of analysis. So if we want to move on, we'll talk a little bit about different techniques of analysis. Again, we'll talk more in the next webinar, but just high level, you will be analyzing the artifacts. You may be doing immersion with a SME and sitting with them and looking at how they do their job. You need to do some root cause analysis, modeling, process analysis, analyze processes for needed improvements, scenario modeling, and many, many more techniques. And as you do that, again, here are all the different outcomes that you may have. I know doesn't sound like a tangible outcome, but it's the most important. Understanding of current state and understanding of the business problem. That's your most important outcome of your analysis. You need to do root cause definition. Why is this problem happening? What is it that we need to fix? Don't just, if you keep getting the wrong products delivered to the customer, don't just come up with a new process of delivering the right product faster. Go back and see why are we not capturing their orders correctly? What happens with the data upstream? Right? We will come up with models of the current state. We will identify perhaps gaps in our processes or in our business system. We may discover process deficiencies. We will capture business scenarios, so many more outcomes of analysis. I'll show you one example. And again, if you'd like to type in the chat, what are the deliverables of your business analysis process, something that you love or you do most or you find is most productive, just type it in the chat for us, please. All right, let's see what we have here. Is not chart, wireframes, mockups, business case. All right. Okay. Let me show you an example. Mockups, use case documents. Perfect. So you all have different examples. Due diligence. Yes, there's a lot of terminology. There's a lot of different formats and shapes in which your analysis will be captured. We have UML diagrams, mapping documents. Thank you so much. So here, let me show you one example, again, that is similar to what I used in the book, and it's a scenario matrix. And if you look at it, it's a very simple example, but it's something that we don't always see. For example, in my case, I'm looking at what happens if I have a customer who wants to place an online order and how that order can be processed and who will accept it. And what I discovered working with my client is that the order process depends on whether this is a new customer already registered. It depends on time of the day, whether my call center is working or offline. It depends on the channel, whether customer orders through the phone, through the website, etc. And in each of these cases, I'll have a different process and different sequence of events. So here is just one example where, as part of your analysis, you may start putting together the scenario matrix. What happens if customer is registered or not, depending on the time, depending on where they go? What happens if customer is not in good standing? For example, they did not actually pay for their previous order. The payment is overdue. Will you process their order differently or perhaps delay it? And as you do something simple like this scenario matrix, you may discover missing scenarios. You'll say, hey, you never told me what happens if customer goes to and calls you after 9 p.m. and nobody's available. Are they getting a message? Are they redirected to the website? What do we need to have in place so that my customer is not going to be left unhappy? And just doing a scenario matrix can help you discover missing user stories, missing use cases, and will help you discover new requirements. All right, so let's move on. Thank you for more examples. We'll talk now about synthesis. And I think some of the examples you mentioned here as the analysis outcomes also apply here. Because when we talk about synthesis, what we're talking about is as we analyzed our problem, we understood our current state. We now know what is not working well. Now we think about what is the future state going to be like? What do we need to do to fix the problem or to get where we need to go? And that's what I call synthesis. That's where we actually define the requirements for future state. We visualize what our solution will be, what needs to be in that solution, what are the components and features, and perhaps the screens or the behavior or the user experience that we need to build for our solution. So this is where we define future state, create a view of future state, and then determine and capture the details of this future state, which is our requirements. So some of the techniques, again, modeling, but now we are modeling future state. We may be doing a product breakdown, break down the future solution by features or by components. We may be doing user story mapping if you are doing in an agile environment. Joint application design, it maybe sounds a little old-fashioned now, but that's really the same goal, is to design and determine the design of the solution. We may be doing storyboarding, prototyping, creating wireframes, mockups, etc. And we are constantly capturing and structuring requirements because requirements really spell out what is that solution that we want to achieve. So the outcomes for us will be future state models, user experience maps, user story maps, captured requirements, structured requirements, future process maps. Again, remember, we've had our current state process, and then we need to see what is the future state process. And the gap is how we need to change the process. And we may have storyboards, prototypes, etc. So anything that helps to visualize what is this solution looking like. We're not going to say how, that's part of the design, but we will say what the solution needs to be able to do so that the business stakeholders get what they want. Here's one example, again, the very simple one, use case diagram. Again, that's a very high level that captures what are different users, what do they need to do with the system. Again, this is an example from my online ordering system. So from here, you can see I have 3 user personas, and they need to do different things in my system. Who is changing menu, who is able to view reports. You can see that the customer is able to place an order, but also a service representative is able to place an order for the customer, who can change the order, etc., etc. Again, this is high level, but it already helps you structure your requirements and perhaps prioritize and say, what is it we need for minimum viable product, what we will do later. You can drill on, you can make it much more detailed. This is just one example. So I'll say that some of your UML diagrams and wireframes and mockups could also be seen as this is how you visualize requirements for your future state, right? All right, now from capturing to packaging, and I can see that I did move my red rectangle right here, which is where it should be. But here is again one of my favorite points that I love to make, and I want to make it again. As we capture future state, we don't just capture it and dump it into the backlog or dump it into business requirements documents. It's not just a big list of requirements in no particular order or in the order in which stakeholders sent it to us. No. If we do that, we will end up with this pile of bricks where the requirements are thrown into the big bucket, and then how do you know if it's complete? Requirements need structure. We need to take those requirements and structure them in such a way that we can see what this future solution looks like. What is it supposed to be? So if we have all those bricks, what is the vision? Do we want to build a tower? Do we want to build a wall? Do we want to build a palace? So in order to do that, we actually need to structure those requirements, especially if you're talking about the large project or the project that has multiple releases, or you have a dispersed team. For many reasons, don't just throw the requirements into a pile. There's so many packaging techniques. You may create a requirements map or story map, which is really like a structure of your requirements, starting with large functions broken down and then broken down more. Or if you are an agile world, you may have themes and epics and user stories and then tasks. You will likely have requirements identifiers, which will be structured to help you find requirements and understand what they're related to. You will be organizing and classifying your requirements because they may have different types. You may have user interface requirements and security requirements and non-functional requirements and so on and so forth. And then we need to track requirements history. We will cross-reference our requirements because they're not always completely not dependent. You will try to make them as atomic as possible, but there will be always cross-referencing. Maybe you have a requirement that captures a certain business rules, and then in multiple process steps need to refer to the same rule. So all of these techniques that you see here actually help you make sense of those 200 requirements or 500 user stories. Because if I come to my future client and they have 500 user stories just in the backlog, my first question would be, what's the structure? How can you know whether they're complete or not? What's missing and what's the relationship? So the packaging and structuring is extremely important to determine whether your analysis is complete, what is missing, what is dependency, and even to plan your delivery. You need to see the relationship and dependencies on the requirements level first. Some of the outcomes, you structure and organize requirements by the type, by domain, by the process, use case, or you use a product breakdown. You'll assign unique identifiers, version dates, tags, whatever your software allows you, or if you don't use the software, then you'll have to come up with your own ways. And you need to cross-reference related requirements so that you build that picture in your head. And again, any models and any visuals that you create as part of your analysis help you enormously to structure and to package requirements and to see that structure instead of the pile of bricks. All right. So if you would like to jump into the chat and type again, what are your methods of structuring requirements and capturing? How do you make sure that you can always find them, you know what is related, and you can see that structure and explain it to someone else? Please put a comment into the chat. Some of you may be working in waterfall environment, maybe in agile. For sure, it will be different. But the idea is the same, that you need to structure and organize your requirements, especially on a large project. So anybody has anything to add by use cases and scenarios? Yeah, by scenarios, that's a very good point. If you have your scenario matrix and perhaps your numbered scenarios, then you cross-reference that you have related use cases and user stories. Requirements traceability matrix, thank you. Anybody's using story maps, user story maps, or requirements maps? BRD, traceability matrix, epics, yes, with different requirements IDs, yeah. So there is, as you can see, there is many methods, and there is different ways to tag your requirements and identify your requirements and really try to use it. Otherwise, on a large project, you start to get buried under the volume, and then it's hard for you to pinpoint where everything goes. Yeah, Jira is pretty good. Jira allows you to structure requirements, again, if you use it right, and if you make it a disciplined approach to track and to tag. All right, so let's talk about the next topic. Here is just an example of a user story map for Agile. And even though that's usually where the planning starts with a user story map, it keeps getting refined. So as you're going through your iterations and you're refining your next backlog items, you keep going back and updating that user story map, because that gives you the visual, including of what is already implemented, what is still to implement, but with this really good structure that helps you see visually. Okay, now validation. So this is a cartoon that you may have seen in the first webinar. I just wanted to put it here again. Can I please see your requirements? Oh, I'll show you when we're done. That still happens. What is the main problem is, as business analysts, sometimes we just do it. We gather information and then we'll end up going away and writing all of those requirements. And then we'll come back and say, oh yeah, let's do a walkthrough. This doesn't work. As we go through analysis, especially now when more and more organizations are agile, we have to validate all the time as we go. Every time, every day, we keep checking and checking. Because if you don't do this validation, we may never achieve that shared understanding of requirements, where all of your stakeholders have the same understanding. So the validation needs to be constant and repetitive and iterative, because you keep refining your requirements. Every day you find new information that impacts requirements in your backlog down there and may actually clarify something that you have already captured and you thought were done. There's so many validation strategies. You track requirements in shared repository, which means that everyone can see it. And if they see that something is incorrect, they can call it out right away. You do an ongoing review between meetings and at the meetings. You recap it. You do requirements walkthroughs, and ideally you do them periodically and don't wait for the big bang 3-day walkthrough at the end of your project. You're doing design reviews with your design and development team to make sure that they are clear on requirements, because if they aren't clear, then maybe you missed something. You're doing your reviews with quality assurance team, because the QA team is very good about telling you that's not clear or that's not testable, which again may pinpoint problems with your requirements and with their quality. So again, these strategies are extremely important, and if you were even able to change just one thing about your business analysis process, try to incorporate validation into everything you do and do a constant validation of your requirements or user stories. Do not wait until the end. And lastly, prioritizing your requirements or user stories. Again, it's necessary. There's no way about it. We will never have time and money to do everything. Business analyst is very important stakeholders in prioritizing and helping your stakeholders or your product owners prioritize requirements. Again, many ways to do it. There is the business value poker. It's a picture that depicts that is often used by agile teams, where each user story is assigned a business value, and depending on that, you are planning your iterations. There's a classic high, medium, low or must have, should have, could have. There is many ways, but the point is it must be done. You can't just get the requirements and never mention the priority, because as you go through, there will always be those that are nice to have, and there will always be those that are mandatory and without which your system is not going to work or your solution will not be complete. So as a business analyst, even if you're not getting the prioritization from your customer or your product owner, you have to keep asking, and you need to have that information, and it needs to be clear in your head as part of your analysis. What is a priority for your different groups of customers? Because time will come where your design team will come back with estimates, and the estimates will be too big, and you will need to scramble, and you will need to actually figure out what is that minimum viable product, what we can live without. So as you're doing your analysis and validation and discussions, that's the right time to prioritize right then. Again, do not wait until the end. Do not wait until the final planning session. Do it as you go. I see here Moscow method of prioritization. Thank you. Yes, so there's many templates. If your organization uses one specific one, just ask and use that. If your company does not use it, or they just say everything is important, it may be up to you as a business analyst to introduce a simple prioritization model. Of course, there are many more difficult, complex ones where you assign values to different factors and then you weigh them and you come up with this very complex compound priorities. Some organizations are mature enough to use that, but the best prioritization method is the one that is transparent so that you don't have those arguments and conflicts. Now, the processes will vary a lot. So it's not always linear, of course, just like nothing else. There will be different cycles. You may have do a discovery analysis cycle multiple times, because as you discover and you analyze, you determine, hey, there are gaps in what I know, and you go back to discovery. You may be doing some prioritization and then doing more detailed requirements or grooming based on priority. This is what's done in Agile. So you have your backlog captured at a high level and you only groom highest priority user stories, right? And then you move on. There may be iterative cycle where you're doing analysis, synthesis, validation, prioritizing, release, and then go back and keep analyzing. There's many, many ways to organize it. It depends on the organization. It depends on what the maturity is, what the process is, what is the nature of your project. Obviously, if you are a startup that is just developing one new product, your process will be very different from a big corporation that is, for example, doing an update on 25 enterprise applications because of legislation change. So it will vary, but what's important is to know and to define what it is and get that agreement. And regardless of how much you iterate, don't forget to capture assumptions. Don't forget to analyze. Don't forget to prioritize. Don't forget to validate and package and structure your requirements. All right. So now, when does business analysis end? Does it end when requirements are documented? Does it end when requirements document is signed off? Does it end when it's sent to technology? When requirements analysis phase of the project plan has ended? When project manager tells business analyst that she's not needed anymore? When do you think the business analysis ends? Do you mind typing that in the chat? What do you think? You knew it's a trick question, right? It doesn't end. Yes, never. Okay, thank you for saying that. Business analysis never ends, and even for any particular project initiative, it does not end until stakeholders have reached a shared understanding of requirements. Requirements are clear to the solution team. Solution design has been validated against requirements. Requirements are clear to the quality assurance team, and your test strategy and your test plans are aligned with requirements. And the solution is designed and tested, and the change is implemented and your user adoption is well underway. So all of these are really stages where business analyst contributes value. A business analyst remains the representative of your client to make sure that whatever we said we require, that's what we design, that's what we implement, that's how we test it. And that's we train our users and prepare them for that new solution so that they're ready to adopt it and they're ready to use it. Because if you've done everything else right but didn't prepare your users, well, the project may still fail if nobody's using a wonderful new system. So most definitely, until application goes to production, and even after your solution is in production and you monitor and you assess how well this solution satisfies requirements, and most likely there will be another phase or a defect fix or a phase 2 of the release. But business analysis never ends, and if you're a business analyst working in a particular organization, you're always there. You always look at new problems. You are analyzing your processes. You're helping your client with new problems. But even for that particular project that you were assigned to, you're never done when you get your requirements signed off. You're still there and you still participate, and hopefully you also want to stay to the end to see the results of your work. So what are the business analysis process deliverables? It's shared understanding of business requirements. Then it's artifacts that capture those requirements and structure them. And it's pictures, models, and diagrams that clarify, illustrate, and organize requirements. And again, the most important outcome is shared understanding by all stakeholders. Everyone needs to have the same view of what they are, because sometimes you probably know you'll write the requirement and you think it's so clear. There is no way anyone can misinterpret it, and someone may still misunderstand it. So you always need to get to the point where everyone interprets the requirements the same way, so that when your solution is out there, you all agree on whether it satisfies the business need, right? Okay, so this takes us, oh, and yes, sorry, I forgot user acceptance criteria. I just wanted to add this to our presentation, the business analyst mindset. Some of the things we talked today really reflect what is a business analyst mindset and how we look at the business problems and try to solve the right problem and question things and do analysis before synthesis and take responsibility for shared understanding of business requirements. So all of these principles is what we will use in business analysis process to make sure that we actually help our client to resolve their problems. So before the end, and we will have a little bit of time for questions at the end, I wanted to throw in a slide with some business analysis resources for you. I included here my book and my blog, plus a few very good other books and blogs and references for you to go to for more resources. I wanted to mention that I am doing one-on-one coaching for business analysts, especially if you want to learn some advanced skills or you're moving to a new job, or perhaps you're moving from waterfall to agile environment and you need to be ready. Perhaps you're preparing for an important interview. If you are interested, definitely let me know. We can chat about that. And lastly, I have 2 more webinars planned. Business analysis outcomes and deliverables on May 20th. And tools and techniques on June 3rd. I will send you the links when I send you the follow-up after the webinar. If you liked the webinar today, if you would like to attend the other ones, definitely sign up. And with that, I want to leave some time for the questions. And I really want to thank you for joining and for your contribution in the chat, for all of the ideas. Please feel free to ask questions. Just drop them in the chat and let me know what your feedback is. What else would you like to learn about? All right. Yes. No, guys, thank you. You've been great. I'm really happy that you are joining and that you find it useful. This is a time where we need to really help each other. And to me, if anyone has lost their job or is thinking about career change, if you consider business analysis, I'll definitely be happy to help. And if some information in this webinar actually helps. So recordings, I'm still working. I'm doing the recording. I have to figure out how to share it because I'm using a free version of WebEx. So I'm working on it. I will send you the slides after this presentation today, and I will include the links to other webinars. If you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, please do and follow my blog so that you can always be the first to see the updates and new tools and new webinars. So let me just check whether you had any questions. So facing a challenge where stakeholder is not sure what they want even when I present my analysis findings. So that's a challenge. I'm not sure whether you tried to ask a very simple question. What is it the problem that you need to solve? Are you trying to solve the problem for them that they don't agree is a problem? So just asking those questions, tell me what's wrong, tell me what the problem is, and see what they answer it. And leave your question very open-ended. Don't come and tell them, here is what I think is wrong with your process. Just ask them, what is it the problem that they need to solve? And listen, see what happens. What if the unstructured information is important? So I'm assuming, Valeria, that you mean the unstructured artifacts, so information you gather in the beginning during your discovery session. Yes. So sometimes you will discover things that nobody tells you, Valeria. What will happen is you start your analysis and then nobody mentions something because to them it's so obvious because maybe they've been doing something for 20 years, but you don't know. Sometimes as you gather those artifacts, you discover things that nobody told you about, and it may turn out to be important. So it also helps you to save your stakeholders time, and it helps you have the examples. If this comes up in analysis session later, you'll say, well, let's not just talk about it and speculate. Here is what you currently do. What is it that you want to change? So it also helps to use as demonstrations. How much time, Rushab is asking, how much time does it take to complete the BA process? Example, build an e-commerce platform. Of course, it depends. If you're building an e-commerce platform as a product, and if you are using agile approach, then basically you may never be done, but you probably will be able to get minimum viable product out in a few months. It really depends on how big you want it to be and how complex and what is it that you're trying to put in, right? Based on your experience, Lucero is asking, what are the most common challenges as a business analyst? I'll tell you what I think, and maybe if someone else wants to drop in the chat what their challenge is. My challenge is where stakeholders tell me what they want, and it's a solution, and they say, here is what I want, write it down. And I hear a lot of business analysts encounter that. And I think the part of the challenge is that our business stakeholders don't always understand what is the role of business analyst. So I have experienced myself when I was trying to analyze the problem that was given to me, and someone said, tell her to stop doing analysis. Tell her to stop questioning our requirements. We'll tell you what our requirements are. And actually it turned out that their requirements were actually strange, and the solution that they were asking about wouldn't solve their problem. So I think it's just that challenge of trying to do analysis other than just writing down what other tells you is a challenge, which is not just ours, but it's about educating stakeholders about what business analysis means. All right. And Anu is saying that her challenge is keeping the momentum going, where stakeholders are excited at first and then they lose interest and don't want to spend the time. Absolutely. And especially with waterfall projects, if you can't show the value soon enough, I guess that's one of the reasons why more organizations are trying to move to Agile, is to give that early value back to your customers. Challenges to plan activities for the process. Yes, that's a challenge. And your PM hopefully supporting you, but if the project manager doesn't, then you may have a challenge on that level, which you need to try to discuss and resolve. What advices would you give to junior business analysts starting in the career? Try to do analysis wherever you go, even if you are not an official business analyst. Analyze the problem, try to capture requirements, try to create diagrams, models. Try to act as a business analyst, even if you aren't one, because that will give you the practice and that also will give you exposure. And maybe it will give you a chance to do a little bit of business analysis in your own organization, and it's less intimidating than trying to start a new job. No support for BAs. Everyone thinks that Igor is saying everyone thinks that anyone can do requirements. Yeah, that's a big challenge. That's where sometimes it's about educating the business about what business analysis means, and that your role is actually important. And I find sometimes it's more of a first I do the analysis, and then someone says, "Oh, now I get it. Now I get what is it that you do. I didn't understand it at first." So it's a little bit of like diplomatic problem, and managing your stakeholders, you have to be nice to them and you have to be respectful, and you need to figure out how to influence them without authority. And the best way is by demonstrating the value of analysis and maybe getting the help of executive sponsor to say, let me help you, let me show you, let's capture a scenario matrix, or let me help you capture business rules with you. And then trying to demonstrate how you are able to see a gap or determine something that they didn't even think about. Usually it's when they say, oh, yes, I didn't even think about it. That's where you get someone to realize what is the value of business analyst. I know it's not simple. So a few people need to leave. Valeria also has the same challenge as Yegor. Yes. Yeah, it's common. Again, don't try to feel that you are alone. Always try, if you have a good project manager or scrum master that is supportive of business analysis, always ask them to support you and to promote business analysis in front of stakeholders. If you have a business analysis manager and any type of executive management, I think that's where sometimes works most. If someone at the executive level promotes the value of business analysis, that's when it works. If my VP or my CIO goes to my business stakeholder and says, I'm not going to give you my development resources yet. You need to speak to my business analyst first. They will help you to determine your requirements. Only then we can actually build a solution. If you have that support from executive level, that's most valuable. If you don't get support at that level, see if you can ask for it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's not that easy. Go through your manager or go directly. Look for all of those ways to get even the higher echelons to say, we need business analysts to make sure that we are spending money wisely and we are not wasting it on wrong solutions. We need business analysis, right? Everyone at the end is pointing at the analyst that requirements are not full. Well, requirements are never done because business keeps changing, because as you're doing your solution, business has been changing all the time. But yes, business analysts are sometimes blamed. Now, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. It also goes back to how involved were your other stakeholders in business analysis process, or how was it just business analysts trying to figure it out on their own? But yeah, I agree, that's one of the challenges. PM Scrum Masters are not supporting. That's, yeah, if they're just driven by the timelines, and especially if you are on staff and your PM is a contractor, that's a typical model. Then PM is just concerned about delivering on time and getting their contract renewed. Unfortunately, that happens too, but hopefully not that often. Sometimes you just have to have those difficult conversations, or maybe, the three of us can talk. All right. Guys, thank you so much. I see a lot of good support and comments. I really, really appreciate it. We will have the next webinar on 20th of May, same time, and then another one on June 3rd. So hopefully you can make it. I'll be in touch with you. In the meantime, I will be sending you the slides And if you want to stay in touch with me through the LinkedIn, I'm always publishing something new on my blog and on LinkedIn. Stay in touch. It's great to be part of this community. And thank you so much for attending. Good luck. Best of luck with all of your professional challenges. Have a fantastic day. Thank you for attending. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.